Welcome back, everybody, to the DeAgostini Jeff Gordon 1997 model build. Today we're going to jump right into stage 15 and continue on this build. So I hope you all have been doing well. It has been a little over a month since the last video had gone out, and I just want to say I'm trying a little bit of a different technique when editing and working on these videos. So let me know if you notice it or if you see something that you like or dislike. I'm still trying to figure out what the best method and process to show you guys this entire build is. But so far, I think it's been going well. This entire video is part 5 or box 5, however you want to look at it. And it is going to be covering stages 15 through 20. So the first thing that you guys are seeing play out in the background are the driver's side exhaust pipes. Stage 15 came with 7 assembly pieces with 3 different sets of screws. And as you've seen, we've already attached the exhaust manifold flange to the pipes that come out of cylinders 1 and 5 from the engine block. And we did that with 2 AP screws. It was important to note the, again, poke-yoke, how the ends of the pipes fit specifically into the manifold flange. And then we assembled cylinder pipe 3 and cylinder pipe 7 together with the pins in it. They're just press fit together. It's just plastic and plastic, so nothing crazy. And then that assembly gets screwed into the manifold flange again with 2 AP screws as well. And then the next thing you guys will see are the pin holes for the left side exhaust pipe bank section. And those get press fit together, but the end pieces, they didn't fit quite right. They were a little too big, so we had to shave them down ever so slightly so that it would fit together better. And as you can see, we had a poke-yoke, a square, and a round peg that went into the assembly. Now the thing about that was when you put them together, the end wasn't the tightest. I feel like clamping them together and then gluing them would be better, but again, I'm not using glue on this model. So I just put those together, put the 2 EP screws in the bottom where the fittings actually go together, and just kind of let it ride from there. It's going to be a static model. I'm not going to be moving it or taking it apart anyway, so I'm not entirely concerned with 100% solid fit. Of course, if I ever do want to take it apart in the future, I'll have that ability to do so. And catching up really quick on what we just missed, we were attaching the coolant hose to the engine block, but before we did that, we had to remove all of the spark plug wires, which ultimately allowed us to attach the exhaust manifold assembly to the engine block using 2 CM screws. And now moving on to stage 16, it is basically just a mirror image of what we did for the driver's side. So everything that's going to be taking place here is exactly what we did for the driver's side, but just now on the passenger side of the engine block and manifold assembly. So what better time to say, if you are new here, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. Please like and subscribe. It helps get the video in the algorithm for other people to see. I don't really like doing all of this influencer stuff. I just want to bring you guys a cool video. But if more people want to see it, the more interaction that the video gets, the more it'll get pushed out through the algorithm to other people. So if you guys could like and subscribe and leave a comment on the video, I would really appreciate it. And I'm sure a lot of other people that are interested in this build will as well. Oh, and one other thing while I'm thinking about it and while we're kind of watching basically the same thing, driver's side to passenger side, I know I'm a little bit behind on these models and these videos, but I just wanted to say that I'm working pretty hard to get a lot of things done all at once. So the 6th box is currently sitting right next to my desk here as I'm recording, and as soon as I get this one done, I'm going to be breaking into that and working on getting that built and recorded, the video portion of it. And then the 7th box is already on its way, so I already have tracking information for that, and it should be arriving within the next week or so. Anyway, I'll get to it. One last thing here on the passenger side is putting this end piece onto the exhaust pipes. I didn't show that on the driver's side, so I figured I might as well show it here on the passenger side for you. And now that we got that done, we'll grab the engine assembly and put that in the center frame. We'll grab another coolant hose that goes on the passenger side. Just like we did on the driver's side, we're gonna have to remove all of the spark plug wires, get those out of the way. I really like the hoses and wires for this. It's just plastic, but it's flexible and it's a tube, so it makes for the assembly relatively easy once you get everything out of the way. I had to employ the tweezers to get these pieces in. This was also the fuel hose. We had to run the fuel hose from the fuel pump to the outlet of the fuel supply pipeline. So once we got that all done, run nice and neat, tucked them in proper, we could then attach the passenger side exhaust manifold assembly into the engine block. Again, similar to the driver's side, using 2 CM screws again. And with that, there's one final thing left to do, is reattach all of the spark plugs and their wires into their specific locations, and that will finalize stage 16. Moving on to stage 17, we finally get into some structural building of the vehicle. And what we're going to be opening here are parts of the front clip subframe assembly. This is specifically the left side, and eventually we'll get into the right side. It's not in the next 2 boxes, I can tell you that. But anyway, these pieces are pretty heavy. They are metal, and it is kind of nice now that we can feel some weight to these things. So working with plastic is kind of nice because it's lightweight, kind of weight saving, so to speak. But for these big giant metal pieces, they are pretty heavy. So this car, I know this car is going to be pretty heavy once we get it all said and done, but we just added those 2 subframe pieces together with 2 CM screws, and that was the whole subassembly for stage 17. We can go ahead and set that aside for a moment while we clean the work mat off and begin stage 18. And in this pack, we have the radiator bracket, and we are going to be assembling the oil filter and the hoses and the fittings that are associated with it. So we're gonna get this frame piece back out and do a real close-up so you can see that the radiator bracket, again, can only be assembled one way. That is done with a CM screw. And as we can see, once it's in place, it looks pretty good. Eventually, we'll do the same thing to the passenger side of the car. But for now, we'll move on to the oil filter housing and assembly. As you can see, there is no oil filter technically. This is all just the housing, the outer part. The oil filter would go inside of there, but we just have a screw going through to the stem, and we put the top and bottom part of the housing together, and that is held together with an AP screw. So now that we have that, so this part was kind of frustrating. This little fitting that goes onto the top of that goes onto the bottom of the oil filter housing was quite frustrating to work with. It was a press fit in, but it just wouldn't press fit right, so it took a lot of force. Eventually I got it to seat properly and look nice, but overall it was somewhat annoying to press fit together. And I know what you guys were gonna say in the comments, Mr. Diecast Driven, why don't you just use assembly oil when putting this thing together? Well, we've gone over it before. I don't want to have any foreign substances in the car, whether it's oil or glue. I just want it to be strictly what it is from the factory, essentially. And I'm sure you guys noticed when we put this oil filter assembly onto the frame that it was only able to go on one way. We'll move on to the braided hose that came with it. I really like the detail that this model has. And again, this can only go in one way, so it's facing backwards towards the rear of the car, as you can see here. And once we get that press fit in, you'll see that it was very easy, simple. Set that down, complete stage 18, and we'll move on to stage 19. So this part of the car is going to be the lower clip part of the subframe. So it's going to come with the power steering fluid reservoir and other suspension mounts that we'll actually get to at the end of this video. Right here you see a pretty big piece of the subframe. Has a lot of detail. Again, a big heavy metal piece that is going to be basically supporting the weight of the vehicle. Here we're adding part of the lower control arm mount, which is going to be held in with an AM screw, which is kind of hard to say, surprisingly. And one thing I'll make a note of is the metal tolerances over the plastic tolerances are a lot tighter, it seems like. I don't know if that's because the paint that they use is thicker, but as you can see here, we have another poke yoke with this other control arm mount, and it actually went together pretty nicely. So it was another AM screw that we used to put that together, and it held up pretty nicely, went together fine, and didn't have too much interference because of the thickness of the paint. And now we'll grab this power steering fluid reservoir. I already put the cap in off screen. It was just a press fit, plastic into plastic. But you'll notice here we have a notch that's in the subframe support as well as in the reservoir itself. So it can only be put together one way vertically with the cap facing up on the car. Obviously, you have to fill it. Anyway, it was put together with an AP screw. Went together pretty good. It was into metal, so not that big of a deal. I know assembly oil would have made it easier, but that's okay. We're sticking to what we've done before. We're going to grab the bottom half of this little subframe clip and attach it to the top half of the railing. And that goes together with 2 AM screws. It's metal into metal, so it took a little bit of force, but overall it really wasn't that difficult to put together. It screwed together nicely and seated fully. And finally, to complete stage 19, we're going to fit the power steering fluid hoses onto the reservoir, a thin one on top and a thicker one on the bottom. And that's going to bring us to our 5th and final stage of this video, number 20. And this honestly is probably the most involved stage that we had this video. There are a lot of pieces to it, and it's kind of interesting because it's a little bit of a quarter weight sort of a car, if you guys are familiar with the automotive industry, where suspension calculations are done on quarter weights of vehicles. So basically what we have is the left front suspension. And as you can see, obviously the coil spring is very springy. So we'll just set all of those pieces to the side real quickly. And here you have the lower control arm, and the spring seat is specifically oriented to have the end of the spring sit in it. Again, not that it really matters for this model, but it's just that attention to detail that's really nice. On a real car, the spring seat's more than likely a bushing. We make those for my job, but I don't think probably on the NASCARs they had spring seats that were bushings. We'll put the top spring seat into the frame assembly, and similar to the bottom spring seat, the top spring seat would more than likely be rubber as well to absorb that noise, vibration, and harshness that you try to keep out of vehicles so the ride is smoother. I know they're NASCARs, so the ride's not going to be that smooth, but still, that's the whole point of having rubber components and bushings in vehicles. And then we'll add the control arm to the bottom of the frame with the 2 mounts that hold it together with 2 ACM screws on either side. And again, we have articulating suspension, which is really cool for this model. And we'll move on to the actual shock absorber part of the suspension, where we'll throw the bushing in the housing first, then we'll drop the spring and then load that in. We'll put the top mount portion on and screw that together with an AP screw, and that'll be the top portion of your shock absorber. And then we'll take that and attach it to the frame with a DM screw that has a flange on it to hold it in place but allow it to rotate. And then we'll just set that aside so we can move over to the front anti-roll bar, link, and arm. We're going to secure those together using an ADM screw. Again, this allows for articulation so that it can be able to rotate very freely, as you see my, whatever I'm doing there. Then we'll pull the frame back into view so we can attach this sub-assembly onto the lower control arm. That's going to be done using another ADM screw that will allow us to lock it into place. After we're done with that, we're going to grab the shock absorber rod and put that into the underside of the shock absorber body, and we're going to attach that to the lower control arm using an FM screw. And you may notice I had a little bit of trouble getting it together. It wasn't that difficult, and once it was together, it was able to rotate a little bit, but also you can see that the shock absorber is able to compress and decompress freely. Just another cool aspect of this model. I know I've been saying it so many times before, but it just blows me away the level of detail that this car is going to have in it once it's all said and done. So speaking of detail, we're going to throw this tether on so when the car crashes, the control arm and wheel assembly doesn't go flying off into the stands. That would be bad. And this thing was a pain to put on to the lower control arm. As you can see me fidgeting around with it, and we only could attach the bottom part for right now. We'll get to the top part in a second. So let me just set that aside and grab the whole left front wheel assembly and the upper control arm attached to it from the last time we worked on this thing. So this part was not terribly difficult to put together. The knuckle that was attached to the wheel as well as upper control arm just slid into the lower control arm, and then we attached the upper arm to the subframe using an AM screw, and again that was flanged and allowed it to rotate. And as you can see there in that image, we attached the tether to the bottom part of the upper control arm that holds it all together. So we'll take one last look at how the compression aspect of the tire works. We have the suspension, we have the spring, the shock absorber, and the control arms all articulating very nicely. And that completes stage 20 in that subassembly. And we'll grab the engine and take one final look at what we did today. We put the exhaust manifolds on both the driver and the passenger side. We ran some coolant hoses, and we ran the fuel hose in front right there. I think this thing's coming together really nicely. I don't have any issues so far. Again, thank you guys all for sticking with me, watching these videos and this kind of documentary as to how we're building this model. I really appreciate all of the likes and the comments and all the interactions that you guys give me. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I know it's a little bit of a longer one. Thanks for sticking with me, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, everyone.